Let's get you more now on the Israel-Hamas conflict. We take you now to SABC News correspondent Sarah Coates, who's in Tel Aviv for us this morning. Thank you very much for your time, Sarah. So perhaps maybe just take us through what have you seen on the ground since Israel's deadline for Palestinians to evacuate, as well as the retaliation against Hamas.
Yes, hello, Melissa. Well, look, the IDF has just announced an extension of these safe passages for people in northern Gaza to move to the south. It is now 11 a.m. local time. They have until 1. So, look, that is another 2 hours that people have to try and move from the north to the south. But, look, it is a very dangerous journey, and a lot of residents in Gaza say they are too afraid to make it. We've seen these horrific videos circulating coming from yesterday when a convoy was blown up on the road, dozens of people killed, wounded. This horrific video is being denied. Well, the IDF says it denies responsibility for this airstrike on this truck, although it says Hamas was actually responsible, setting booby traps on the road. But look, you know, the images we're seeing coming out of Gaza are just horrendous. The hospitals are completely overwhelmed. The United Nations says the situation on the ground is, quote, untenable. There are more than 10,000 people who've been wounded. Thousands more have been killed. And look, just looking at those pictures of the rubble of all of these destroyed buildings, that number is certainly set to rise. Now, in terms of a ground operation, Israeli troops continue to mount on the Gaza border. Sderot residents, this is a community, a big town right on the Gaza border. It is apparently being evacuated in the next few hours. So, look, the situation is certainly moving very, very rapidly. People on the ground are really awaiting this expected ground offensive. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, he's visited troops down on the border, saying that this will be a large operation, saying the next stage is coming very soon, adding that it will be from the ground, from the sea and from the sky. So look, really the tension here, it's everyone's on a knife's edge waiting for this next move to be made by the IDF.
Indeed, Sarah, and we've seen all those images of utter carnage that's happening there. Maybe also just give us a brief indication of how has Israel responded to President Cyril Ramaphosa's support for the people of Palestine? Sorry, I didn't quite get that. Could you please repeat? Perhaps just let us know how Israel has responded to President Cyril Ramaphosa's support for the people of Palestine.
Well, look, Israel says it is not targeting civilians. It says this is why it's giving these increased timeframes for people to safely evacuate. Israel says it is targeting Hamas, which it says hides behind its civilians, using them as human shields. The IDF came out a little while ago to say its main objective in Gaza is not to hurt the people there. It is to secure the safe release of these hostages that were taken more than a week ago now. We understand that there are around 150, if not more, people being held in the Gaza Strip. They are believed to be held in these so-called terror tunnels, which run all underneath Gaza. Now, the IDF says in order to do that, a large-scale military campaign must take place. But it says, you know, these civilians must go to the south to ensure their safety. But look, we are seeing still airstrikes happening down in the south. And in reality, these people have nowhere to go. They cannot leave the Gaza Strip. The Rafah crossing, which was open reportedly yesterday for foreigners to leave, for US citizens also, has reportedly remained shut. So there are people amassing down in the south waiting to get out, and at the same time, no humanitarian aid is getting in. So Israel is apparently working right now with the United States, with Egypt, to try and facilitate some sort of a humanitarian corridor, given that power has run out, petrol has basically run out, food also, and people barely have any water. These hospitals are having to basically prioritise people with their treatment, saying that if aid doesn't get into the Strip very, very soon, then these hospitals will turn into mass graves. Now, we have heard doctors from the Palestinian Red Crescent in Al-Shifa, the biggest hospital in the Gaza Strip, saying they will not evacuate, they will not leave people there who simply cannot be evacuated. We do need to remember that there are people there with serious illnesses even before this started, and of course people who've been seriously injured during this last 8 days of fighting.
Indeed. So what impact has this conflict in particular had on businesses with a presence in Israel?
Well, look, businesses are not allowed to open unless they are connected to a bomb shelter. That was a directive given by Israeli authorities about 4 days ago. People are being advised to stay close to shelter or stay at home. Schools are shut, universities are closed. Many businesses are simply not operating because they've done a risk assessment and they think it is just simply too dangerous to have staff, working in their offices and businesses and so on. So, look, it is a pretty dead town at the moment, or city, I should say. Today, Sunday, is like a Monday for the rest of us. It is the first day of the working week. But, when I got up this morning and looked around, it is really, really quiet. Barely anyone out on the streets, certainly more than over the last couple of days. But look, that is probably going to change given what we are expecting in the next few hours and next few days, even potentially next few weeks and months ahead. So look, it's certainly going to slow the economy down. But, people are just really bracing for what is expected to come.
And speaking of what is expected to come, we also understand that there is an Israeli newly formed war cabinet, Sarah, perhaps that met in Tel Aviv. Maybe just take us through what came out of this meeting with the newly formed war cabinet.
Well, look, they're just looking at the next steps to take. As I mentioned, the IDF says that it is working to ensure the protection of civilians, that is both in Gaza and in Israel. They've also been working very closely with Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He's in Saudi Arabia at the moment. He's just been meeting with MBS there, and he says it was a very productive meeting. He's now on his way to Egypt, set to facilitate talks there. Of course, Israeli authorities will be involved in these talks, with potentially hoping to set up some sort of a humanitarian Wow, did you just hear that bang? I'm not too sure what it was. There were no sirens here, but look, it is pretty tense on the ground. As I mentioned, Blinken will be in Egypt later on today and will be talking with these Israeli authorities. But look, it is a very small cabinet and they are the ones responsible for any military decisions going forward.
And Sarah, you had spoken about some world leaders who've added their voice onto the conflict as well. And earlier on, just when we started the conversation, I had actually asked whether there has been any response yet, to President Cyril Ramaphosa, South Africa's president, the support that is pledged for the people of Palestine from that end.
Well, look, I'm not aware of that, but I know that, there is growing support for the people in Gaza. We've seen many protests around the world over this weekend over this operation in Gaza. And look, that is just increasing. But in saying that, there is a lot of support for Israel. One of its closest allies, the United States, continues to throw military aid behind Israel. Another aircraft carrier is on its way here to the Mediterranean. And, a number of other world leaders. Rishi Sunak has just pledged his support behind Israel. So look, it really is a very rapidly moving situation. Alliances are changing all the time. China has just come out to condemn Israel very, very harshly. So, all of this can change as this military operation goes forward as expected in the coming days and hours.